Okay, welcome to the On Your Side podcast. I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell.
How is Susan Campbell today?
I'm good, getting a lot of stuff done, being super productive.
Ooh.
And it's one of those good days where you feel like you're checking a lot of things off the list.
Wow.
Do you make lists?
No, I don't. Which I should, because that's why I always forget things.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't survive if I didn't have a list. And it's always written out.
Yes.
I have everything on my giant desk calendar.
Yes.
And I know exactly what I need to do every single day. The people who do it all in their phone or digitally, I'm just so old school, I can't do it.
I know. Well, you just saw me. I was trying to download tickets on my phone, and I'm like, how do I do this? Can I just have a paper ticket to go to this ball game? Yeah, we're past that.
Way past that.
Hey, we're talking about resumes, the do's and don'ts of submitting a resume, what you should not put on there. But more importantly, AI is really big right now, artificial intelligence. What can you do to get your resume past AI?
Well, and I think this is such an interesting conversation because everything, we hear AI and it sounds like this giant, big, scary topic. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much AI is already used and has been used for a long time in so many different applications of our lives. And on the job hunt is just one of them that you don't think about.
I remember back in the day, this may be before your time, Ms. Campbell, but you'd have to fill out a application.
I've done that too.
Really?
But I appreciate you making me feel young.
Yeah, well, I'm here for you.
Thank you.
Remember that though? It was like, you would just go in somewhere and then
pick up that piece of paper.
Yeah, here you go. Fill out this app, and then you just hope they, call you.
That's how I got my first lifeguarding job. That's how I got my first hostess job.
Oh, yeah, hostess.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah, at a restaurant.
Okay.
I spent one summer waiting tables and hosting.
Wow. All right. Everything's changed, though. Everything now is electronic. Even when you got this job, you probably sent something, right? A link or something?
Absolutely.
Oh, boy, times have changed. So let's jump right into it. We're talking about artificial intelligence and resumes, and we're going to go to the expert on the topic, Jeremy Schiff. He's the CEO of RecruitBot. How you doing today, Jeremy?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're doing well. Just so we all know, and our listeners, give us a brief explanation. What is RecruitBot?
Yeah, so RecruitBot is a tool that allows recruiters and companies to find and reach out to candidates when they're looking for jobs. So we're going to be talking a little bit, it sounds like today, about people, about how you're going to apply for jobs, but sort of half of the job market is the other way around, of companies finding and reaching out to you. So we help companies do that.
Okay, tell us about AI and how it works for an employer. For instance, if somebody's applying for a job, they send their cover letter in, they send in their resume. What happens then once it reaches the human resources department or the hiring person at a company? What normally happens?
Yeah, so there's always a part that's sort of the computer's doing and a part that the human's doing. So the computer is often helping filter those resumes down and try and find the ones that are really relevant to what the companies are looking for. And so think of almost like if I create a web page, I'm creating a web page and I want to come up with the words that when I type it into Google, that Google's going to know how to go and find it. It's almost the same sort of thing with these sorts of systems, which is if I'm looking for a software engineer and they're looking and they type software engineer into their AI engine, they're going to want people with software engineer on their resume to be showing up. So you want job titles and experience and skills to be in line with what it is that the machines are going to be looking at. But you still want to have enough detail so that when the human goes and reads it later, that they're excited about the resume you're seeing.
So just to clarify for our listeners, people are submitting resumes and it goes through a robot, artificial intelligence, and it may pass it on to the human, or it may just reject it because it doesn't meet the qualifications, the right buzzwords.
So most companies aren't necessarily rejecting them outright, but they will definitely prioritize reaching out to the candidates that are that the robot says is good. And so if you think about it, if the recruiter gets back to those people sooner and that person gets the job, then you won't have the opportunity to do so.
Wow.
So let's make that robot fall in love with us. What do we need to make sure we include on the resume so we are kind of hitting these benchmarks or these buzzwords that might make sure that we are an attractive job applicant?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do is just go to the job descriptions on these websites. They usually literally say, here are the job titles we're looking here for, here are the skills we're looking for. If you go and look at 10 companies that you're interested in getting a job at, they're going to have a lot of things that are in common. So whatever those common things are, go and make sure that those sorts of words are on your resume. And also, not only is that when you're applying, but if you're providing that information on your resume and that's on the internet or that's on LinkedIn or something, those same keywords are what tools like RecruitBot is going to be using to help companies work out that they want to reach out to you as well. So it goes both ways.
Wow. I mean, when you read that job description, you're choosing, or at least you should be choosing the words from that job description and somehow put them into your resume so everything matches up and hopefully you wind up on top of the hiring pile.
That's exactly right.
Wow. Okay. What are some of the things that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing on their resume? I mean, is there anything they're putting on there that maybe the robot would, put them at the bottom of the list?
It's pretty rare that they're going to be words that are going to be wrong, but something that feels a little bit unintuitive is back in the day, people used to make a lot of flashy resumes. They would get sort of cool designs and they would sort of lay it out in weird and interesting ways. It turns out if you do that, it's a human might be impressed, but the computers are actually pretty easily confused about those things. It's pretty amazing the number of different ways that resumes can be structured. And so if the computer gets confused, it's going to put it to the bottom of the list. So you really actually want a very sort of simple layout format where you're just going through, here's my experience, here's my education, here are the skills that I have, in a very sort of simple and easy to read way. That actually makes it a lot easier for the robot and also for humans who are reading through lots of resumes. Sometimes it can help you stand out if you're a niche profession like a designer. But for most professions, they want to be able to work out what it is about you and your background as quickly as possible. So actually, the more of a standard format that you support, the easier it's going to be to get to the next step and actually having a conversation with the recruiter and hopefully getting an interview and getting a job.
That's interesting. Simple is better. I guess if you get too crazy with flowery stuff and
imagine a resume in like Comic Sans or something.
Right. So
no.
It confuses the robots. So
well, it also, I think, he said it. It's frustrating also for the person who's looking through. I mean, some of these jobs are super desirable. Mm-hmm. You have, dozens of candidates, maybe even more than that. And you do want to do your due diligence and go through and make sure you're finding the right person. But if you're getting caught up on a resume that doesn't quite make sense, or you can't find where this person went to school and that matters to you, my goodness.
Don't make your resume pretty. Just stay with the bullet points, right?
Absolutely.
I got my degree, blah, 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 blah.
It's easier for me, too. What are some of the other mistakes that people make with resumes? I mean, I'm sure there are some. You see probably all kinds of examples of people trying to tell like the whole life story or maybe not enough. What are some of the other common things that are going on with resumes?
Yeah. So I think another major one is you want to make sure that you have enough context that it's almost like enough things that if you actually met with the person, they could go through and ask more specific questions about those specific bullets, right? And so it's almost like when you're telling a good story and you're having a conversation with someone, you want to give them sort of different points that they can go and react to and go and ask questions about. So the same thing is sort of true. And so you're going to want to say, and especially for a lot of roles, the more quantifiable you can make your role or your impact, the better. So if you can say, hey, I helped sales go from this number to that number, or I helped launch this marketing campaign that generated this much money, that is really easy for people to understand what the value you provided. And when they ultimately talk to you, it's really easy for them to know what to dig in on.
I mean, that's a great example, because if you say, I've been the number one salesman for the past 3 years, sounds great, but we want to hear dollar amounts. I mean, we meaning the hiring person. Instead of being I'm the number one salesman, you're going to say I helped to generate $700,000 a year for the company, which is the most ever. You really got to brag about yourself. And when you put the stats and the numbers with it, that makes it jump out.
It does, and hopefully it also, again, it's a little bit weird. Most people don't feel comfortable bragging or really talking about all of their accomplishments, which is sort of what you're supposed to do in a resume. But if you are being very concrete about, here are the numbers, this is what I did, like these are just objectively true things, it'll come across really well, and it's easy to feel more sort of confident about talking about it in a way where you're not going to come across as bragging, and you're just going to come across as confident and a capable person who knows what they're doing.
I've heard that hiring people, whether it's HR or whatever, they only look at a resume for like 15 seconds before they toss it. Is that true?
Yeah, there are studies that show it depends a lot on the role. It sort of falls into two categories. They can look at a resume and very quickly say, this isn't a good resume, and get rid of it. And like it's usually that this is actually not, it's not that this person isn't good, it's just that they're actually a really poor fit for the role. So maybe they're trying to switch careers or something where that's going to be a much harder move for them. When it comes to like resumes that are a good fit, though, recruiters will spend a lot more time studying the resume, working out whether or not it's going to be relevant to the hiring manager. Some of them will even go and do extra diligence. They will go and pull in more information from around the internet. RecruitBot makes it really easy because we crawl the entire internet to give information about candidates. It makes it really easy for them to go and follow up and get more information about things that they've done, which A, helps them understand if it's a better role, and B, helps them sell that candidate to the hiring manager. In a lot of ways, the recruiters are sort of the advocates inside the organization to help the candidates get hired. They're really on your side most of the time.
Ooh, we got a little On Your Side plug there. We're on the On Your Side podcast, and I liked that. That was a little fun buzzword.
It was.
When your company works with companies, what are the things that that you are finding that employers are searching for or that matter most in this kind of totally changing landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the last 6 months especially, there's been a big shift away from quantity and towards quality. So before, people were, especially when businesses were booming, it was just get as many bodies and as many seats as quickly as possible. Obviously, people have to be good, but there was a lot less scrutiny. And so there's a lot more people being careful about who it is that they're hiring, at what pace, focusing on more specialized roles, high impact roles, those sorts of things. And RecruitBot makes it really easy to go find and reach out to those specific people, which ultimately gets everyone better quality people who are exactly what they're looking for. So there's been this big shift, and that's been really important to sort of think about.
For somebody who has maybe never worked with a recruiter before, or has never had somebody reach out based on something their resume that they put online, what should they be looking for in a conversation with a recruiter, or what do we need to watch out for? What are some of the pitfalls of maybe not so great recruiters?
Yeah, so ultimately, the recruiter should be very concrete. They should have a role in mind. They should be able to articulate why they think that there's a good fit. For most roles, the recruiter should be spending a significant amount of time trying to convince you why it is a great place that you want to work. It's not just a sort of one-sided conversation anymore of like, please give me a job. It's why should I work here? What, like a lot of people, even in these difficult markets, have a lot of opportunities. And so good recruiters are, again, if they're advocating for you inside of the organization, they should be collecting information about why you're a good fit. And that can feel adversarial because they're asking you all sorts of questions. But if they're doing a good job, they're actually collecting data to help you again, to convince the people, the hiring managers or others in the room who are making the decision, why you're actually a great fit.
When it comes to this world of AI and all of the searching that's going on behind the scenes that maybe we don't realize, I love my job a whole bunch. I'm not on the job hunt. I don't think Gary is either. But is this a world where all of us should have our resume and our information out there just in case the total dream job does pop up and a recruiter or AI recruiter is looking for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think people would be surprised how many informational interviews are happening all the time. It's like sort of an internal joke at RecruitBot that people who say, I'm not looking for a job, but I'm open to a conversation, is usually how you hire the best people always. People are open to, like, there's nothing wrong or unethical about being open to new conversations and opportunities. And honestly, I would actually view them more like networking opportunities and less like I'm explicitly looking for a job. A lot of the time, a friend of yours is a great fit, or you can help someone in a totally different way, or you connect on some totally different level. It's really just about connecting with people where there are interesting opportunities in your field. And if it turns into something more, great. But that doesn't mean that there's any sort of obligation, right? I have people who say, hey, we don't know, or I don't know if I'm looking for a job. And my response is usually, I don't know if we want to hire you yet, right? Like there's sort of all of this like very big concern about that there's a huge step in just sort of having a conversation with another employer about something, when the reality is you're just learning something new. Maybe you'll find out something that's going to allow you to do a better job in your current role. Like, that's great too.
I love that perspective.
Always keep the door open, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a LinkedIn page?
I technically have one, but it hasn't been updated in a whole bunch of years. So it's not a good representation of any of the work that I've done.
I mean, do you have like our stuff on there as far as on your side stuff?
No, I need to go through and actually work on it.
So it's really old
It's
then.
super old.
So if somebody looked up your LinkedIn, it's not going to have all the updated information.
They would know I was a really great reporter in 2012.
Oh my goodness gracious!
I'm still a really great reporter, by the way.
You are. The reason I bring that up is because you were like, is it a good idea to have your resume out there? That kind of acts like a resume that's out there anyway.
Extra info, yeah.
But you have to keep it updated. Hey, Jeremy, I mean, do hiring people or companies, do they compare resumes with the LinkedIn to see if there's any, things that contradict each other?
They're not really. I mean, everyone actually is more focused on the most up-to-date information. So you just gave the great example of like maybe your data isn't most up-to-date on LinkedIn, and so I need to go and look somewhere else to go and find more relevant information. And so a lot of recruiters are sort of like pulling threads. It's like, okay, this person is great, but there isn't enough information on LinkedIn. Maybe I'll go to their company webpage and learn more about what they're up to now and sort of understand where it's relevant. But the easier you make it for the recruiter to go and get the information that they're looking for, the more opportunities you're ultimately going to find.
Hey, I wanted to circle back to a point earlier in the conversation about don't make your resume look pretty with all kinds of, flowers or graphics or stuff like that. There are some software companies out there that you just put in your information and it kind of formats it for you. There's a charge for that, but does that screw up the AI? Like if you have all your skills in the left-hand column and then over here you have like your experience, but then you could also choose to format it differently to where, the skills are over here and your experience is over here. So when you use programs like that, does that kind of trick or dupe AI, or are those okay?
So it's probably going to ultimately depend on the specific company, but if any of those companies are doing their job well at this point, they're probably coordinating with the sort of robotic sort of screening technology companies that you're talking about to make sure that their resumes are sort of easy to understand. Now, again, it's not that like there's only one format, and if you get it wrong, you're not going to get through the system. Obviously, it's going to be these systems are going to be a lot more flexible than that, but so I would suspect that any of those companies it's probably going to be fine in terms of making sure that things are going to get through. It's really when you get sort of pretty crazy. Like I've seen resumes that look more like PowerPoint infographics than they do actual resumes. That's a lot harder for a system to go and have an understanding about.
Hey, final question for you. For job seekers who are maybe recently out of college and have like 1 to 5 years of experience, that seems like a no-brainer that they should have a one-page resume. Maybe even up to 10 years, you could squeeze in your accomplishments and experience and skills into one page. But when is it getting, like I have 30 years experience. If I was to send something out, I feel like I'd have 5 pages. Is there a guideline for people who do have a lot of experience? Is 2 pages not enough? Too much? I couldn't put everything on 1 page.
For sure. So yeah, in general, I think if you're a junior, like still getting started in your career, 1 page is totally fine. And again, lean into things that are relevant about maybe it's clubs that you've been part of or associations or even like charity or anything, any sort of involvement where people might see that you're proactive or you're excited about whatever you're working on, or that you have any sort of even related skills like, oh, I'm good at talking to people because I did this hostess job, as we were just talking about earlier. And then the flip side is, I wouldn't generally go past 2 pages in the world where everyone's attention span is pretty limited. People, again, want to get to the right information really quickly. And so you should really think of this sort of as trying to tell a narrative. So I need to understand why you are where you are now and what the key things that you did in the past that are relevant. But if you, I don't know, 10 years ago switched careers, you don't need to bring that up anymore. Like, that's totally fine. Leave that out. Or if you've had a long career, just sort of keep it to the 3 or 4 most recent opportunities that you jobs that you've had, and talk about what it is that you've really contributed there, because that's going to be what's going to ultimately excite the employers.
It seems like maybe a decade or even longer than that, maybe even 20 years ago, if you were at a employer for, say, 20 years, you looked very loyal, you looked stable. I mean, you weren't fired because you're a good person, or they would have, shown you the door. Nowadays, it seems that, I don't want to call it job hopping, but your resume needs to be, I worked here for 3 years. Now I worked here for 2 years. Now I had a better opportunity for 3 years. How does that play into a resume? Are those turn-offs or turn-ons when you have a lot of different jobs over the course of several years?
Yeah, so it's funny because recruiters really disagree here. So some of them really care about stability, and probably more than most are like, if you're switching jobs every year or every 18 months, that's probably not going to be like looked on very positively. But the difference between staying at a company for 3 years and 10 years is probably the same. Like, most recruiters sort of think about that interchangeably. Amusingly, some, especially when the job market's really hot, sometimes people will look at job hoppers as an opportunity, because if it's been 9 months and you switch jobs every year, well, you're probably going to respond to a recruiter that's reaching out to them. So it really depends on sort of what they're looking for. But on the whole, I would definitely say that trying to stay at a company for, not every company, but making sure you have a couple of jobs with 2 or 3 years of experience will definitely go a long way. Companies want to invest in good companies anyway, want to invest in their employees. And so you want to make sure that everyone's getting a lot of value out of that.
All right, Jeremy Schiff, he's with RecruitBot. If people want to find out more about you, or they want to find out more about RecruitBot and what RecruitBot offers, what websites, social media platforms, what do you want to tell us?
Yeah, so easiest way is www.recruitbot.com. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, but coming to the website is for the most up-to-date information is usually the best way to go.
All right. Hey, listen, thanks so much for being on the On Your Side podcast. It's always fun talking about AI and its effects on like what we're talking about today, resumes. So, Jeremy, have a good one. Thanks so much for being on the On Your Side podcast, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
The On Your Side podcast is produced by Brad Denny. Our audio engineer and editor is Todd Martin. Segment producer is Colin Stanton. And I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell. If you have a problem you can't resolve, maybe we can. Send us a message through azfamily.com or our AZ Family mobile app. Look for the On Your Side section and leave us a message. Thanks so much for listening to the On Your Side podcast. And if you like it, leave us a review. We'll see you next week.
On Your Side is on Good Morning Arizona every weekday morning at 6:45 and 7 o'clock, and every weekday evening on Good Evening Arizona at 4 and 5 o'clock. You can also catch it on Arizona's Family News at 9 on 3TV every weeknight.